Okay, so I'm going to zoom this in so you can see it. Now, honestly, I don't need to zoom this in. In fact, it's pretty annoying to me as an analyst to zoom this in and then have to move around and things. But I know that you're watching this video, you're not in the room with me. You have to be able to see this zoomed in. So just keep that in mind that it might cause me some hesitation or some delay because I'm trying to think, how do I show this on the screen even though I have such a limited amount of space to do it? So just keep that in mind that I'll talk through things and sometimes you may not see them. So if I'm over here doing a formula, you might not see the first part of the data set and maybe that's the part I'm using. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and keep track of what I'm saying here, okay? I'm saying words on purpose. So I'm going to canvas the data. So other people call that data profiling. I don't really call it data profiling because data profiling is a very deep dive into the quality of the data, the formats, all that stuff. At first, I just want to know how much data I have to work with. So I've got, generally speaking, I've got 10 variables. So how did I know that? Well, I just went right across and counted them, okay? Or I let Excel do it for me. It says 10C over there. I cannot zoom that in, but it says 10C, so that means 10 columns have been highlighted. If I go all the way down, I can see I have 271,889 rows. Now, because we don't consider field names or variable names as observations, we subtract one off of that. I already forgot the number now, but we have 271,888 observations, okay? Or sample size if you want, whatever it is, how scientific you want to get with your terminology. But I have that many observations. That's a lot. Now, typically what people do is they run a prototype of the data set. What I mean by that is if you have over 270,000 rows of data and you're going to use Excel for it, which there's nothing wrong with that, you might want to consider just taking the first 10,000 rows. Why? Because your computer could be slowed down if you tackle 270,000 rows and you don't really have a plan or a strategy going into this on how you're going to analyze the data. And in fact, as I said earlier, data dumps, you don't know what you're looking for, so how can you have a strategy? Okay, so you might want to do that. You might want to just take 10,000, and I know it's a bunch of work, and I know some people are going to be like, well, I don't want to do that because I want to just get this done. Well, I'm telling you right now, that is the best way to do it, is to take a prototype, a template, if you will, so that you can quickly do some work on it. And then what you learned through that prototype experience, you can apply it to the greater data set, okay? Now, because I do have a little bit more experience than most people, I'm not going to do a template. I'm not going to do a sample set or a subset or split this data off to do a template. Okay? So the first thing I like to do is see what kind of data I have. So it looks like, so the best way to do this is go to do a filter, and then you can go to those drop-down menus and look and see how much data I have. So it looks like it's a lot of information. In fact, not all of them showing. So traveler code, I don't know what this means. Okay, and that's the reality. You're going to hear me keep saying this because I want to drill this into you. The reality is you are given this data set to work on to improve something within the company, whether it's reducing cost, increasing sales, increasing customer service, which leads to sales, customer satisfaction leads to sales, better product understanding, which leads to better cost efficiencies, whatever it is. I don't know what these codes mean. Now, what you could do, and we can't do that in this simulated environment, is you could go to your IT administrator, whoever gave you this data, and maybe they know. If they don't know, then somebody at a kiosk at an airport or somebody in a travel administration organization, a government organization would know. Or granted, you might not be able to get a hold of those folks, but that's the reality. So I don't know what the traveler code means. I do know that I've got 1 here, Brazillian, and forgive me for not being able to say the names properly with the accent. I do speak Spanish, doesn't mean I speak Portuguese, but I'm going to do my best. I mean, no offense. I have 2 different originations, but it looks like, I mean, I could assume that these are pairs. I mean, if you look at it this way, could I assume that these are paired off? Like return trips. Could I assume that? Maybe, but I don't think I have any other data to suggest that, to validate that. You know, I mean, could these, I see a pattern here with these codes, but the codes in and of themselves, like a 1-1 versus a 2-2, doesn't mean anything. Does that make sense? Like, I can't say all travel codes of 1 equals this, all travel codes of 2 equals this. So I think they're relationships between each other. Okay. Now that's an awful gamble to assume, because then you might introduce a variable that you might create a new variable in here, like partner or married set, partner flights, or round trip, yes or no. However, I don't want to do that right now. I don't have enough information to convince me that that is going to be accurate. As silly as that might sound to some people, because I'm looking at this all the way down, it looks like return flights. You know, I don't have enough information, and quite frankly, I'm not going to waste time on developing a formula, a function, etc. right off the bat when I've got all this other juicy, low-hanging fruit data to work with. Okay, low-hanging fruit. I can do 5Ms, I can do other descriptive analytics, I can do a correlation study between distance and price. I could break this out into a month, and let's just scroll here. I don't know if there's different, yep, there's different years in here. I could break it out by year. I could do a function for year, I could do a function for month, and then start analyzing this data based on monthlies instead of dailies. Okay, so those are the things that I'm going to approach and think about here. The other thing I could do, and this is more intermediate, not beginner's level, not advanced, so shocker, it's just intermediate. I could go on the internet and I can find a list of all of the codes or all of the names of international airports, because I would assume these are international airports. Again, that's an assumption. And then I could find out the country that they are. You know, obviously I can imagine a few of these based on my international travel myself through the years and my knowledge of geopolitical topics through the years, etc. I mean, it's all looking like it's Rio de Janeiro, Brazil kind of stuff there. So if I wanted to spend more time, I could do that. In fact, why don't we do something here where we kind of investigate that a little bit. I'm going to create a new sheet. Now keep in mind, what we're doing here is called chicken scratch. What that means is I'm going to create a sheet just to do some idea, to run with an idea that I want to experiment with. If you turn this as an assignment, particularly in my course, and you show sheet 1 and you show all this junk, you will lose points because it's not professional. Okay? Hide that stuff or delete it once you're done with your study or your research. Okay? Much more professional. And you will lose points in my class because it strikes against data ink ratio. You're showing too much data or too much ink or data ink together that is useless to me. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go highlight all this data. I'll zoom it in for you so you can see a little bit better, but it's just the airport names. We're going to go to data, and your experience will vary, your mileage will vary. We go to remove duplicates, hit OK, and now I have 9 unique airports. Okay, a light bulb just went off in my head, and hopefully it went off in your head too. Because that, my folks, my friends, is data science. If you don't know what's in your data dump, these are the procedures you do to understand it. Why does a light bulb go off in my head? Because look at this. We have 270,000 plus rows of data, and there's only 9 airports or locations in that data. So that's the from. Now let's go ahead and do the to, just to validate that there isn't different ones. I suspect there aren't different ones. So copy that over, go up to remove duplicates. Now this time Excel is going to say, hey, do you want to expand the selection? No, I don't. I don't want Excel to be smarter than me in this case. Continue with the current selection, Excel. Don't try to do everything. Don't try to go over to column A and remove duplicates on that too. I told you to do it in C, do it in C. Okay, so here we go, 9 as well. Now, here's a quick way you could sort this thing. So we could go up here to sort. Again, your experience will vary. Sort that. Sort this one. If you're wondering what's going on, Excel is asking me to expand my sortation criteria. So look at that. Equals, 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 equals. Okay. I'm going to unsort this just to show you a quick technique. Let's say you have 10,000 airports, which I don't think that is true. I don't think there's 10,000 airports out there. But let's say there are. Maybe it's a customer list, maybe it's a product list, whatever. And you don't want to sort this thing and look eye to eye, right? Like row to row. Do a VLOOKUP. I'm going to show you. So I'm going to VLOOKUP this here. I'm going to look for Florianopolis across this data, and I'm going to bring back the second column, which if there is a match, if this formula finds Florianopolis in the data set, it'll bring back a 0, which means it matched. Look at that. So everything is in there. So let's say I have an airport here called Bahamas. Okay, that doesn't make sense, but it returned an NA here because it doesn't have a Bahamas over here. Watch what happens when I put in Bahamas. There it is, it found it. Okay, so that's how you can cleverly just look up to see if you have similarities. Okay, now that I know that, I can take a notepad. This is what I'm saying before. Get rid of this sheet. Get out a notepad or your Google Doc or a second monitor and put 9 unique airports. Okay, so now you have that information. You don't need this anymore. Get rid of this. Get rid of it. Okay? It's gone. That's what I'm saying, folks. That's what a lot of students miss, is that was sloppy work. If I kept that in there for my professor to see or my boss to see, they get confused, like, what is this? Why do I need to see this? You just wasted 2 minutes of my life trying to figure out why you showed me this, or why you thought it was so important in your sloppy work, or your work, professional work, which was sloppy, to show me sheet 1, which just had a bunch of junk in it. Okay, you just wasted my time. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get at here. Okay.